Kevin Clarkson here. I want to tell you about a great deal for our friends and family of Prophecy in the News. We recently had our Pikes Peak Prophecy Summit. We had an incredible lineup of speakers and guests. The attendees were so excited. We heard many comments this was the best prophecy conference ever. If you didn't make it, not to despair. We're offering live streaming still through August the 17th. And by paying $49.95, you have access to the live stream of all the material in the main room. We had such great speakers. We had a special message from Chuck Missler about the decline of America. We had a message from Bill Federer about the rising Arab Spring. We had messages from Dan Goodwin about the timing and the sense of the barley harvest and the Lord's return. Messages from Anthony Patch, a new face, about what's happening really in physics today that shows spiritual reality. Get on board. Get with us. Sign up for live streaming. Call the 800 number on your screen or go to prophecyinthenews.com. Thank you. Welcome to this edition of Prophecy in the News. I'm your host, Dr. Kevin Clarkson, with a special guest today, Dan Goodwin. And we are doing the second of a two-part series on the barley harvest and how it relates to the festivals of the Lord and the teaching about the return of the Lord. Welcome, Dan.
It's good to be back again, and we had a great time last time, and
yes, sir.
Can't wait to get into this feeding of the 5,000.
Well, we are talking about the barley harvest. That's the name of this study. And just to revisit, in case some might have missed the first program, what led you into this insight?
What led me into the writing of the book, The Barley Harvest, was the fact that Passover and Easter, what we call Easter, the resurrection, were backwards this year. We celebrated Easter on March 27th, and a month later, the next month, we celebrated Passover on April 22nd. Well, that's backwards.
Yes.
And I understood about leap year. I understood that they add a 13th month every many years, the Jews do. But I didn't. I wanted to get down to the bottom of it. Why does this happen? What's the purpose of it all? And boy, did I stumble on something big with the barley.
Yeah, tell us what you found.
What I stumbled on was that it's the barley harvest that determines whether there's a leap year or not. In Bible days, that. Now they do it mathematically now, so none of what's in this book makes any difference to to what they do. It's mathematically done. You can go 1,000 years in the future on your computer, and you can find out where Passover is. But that's not biblical. In Bible days, the barley had to be ripe or it can't be Passover. And so the Levites, on the last day of the month of Adar, which is right before Passover month, he would look at the fields. If the barley was ripe, then it would become Passover month. If the barley's not ripe, they added that 13th month called Adar 2. And it's a leap year. And now let's be real here. They weren't stupid.
Yeah.
They knew several weeks in advance if the barley's going to be ripe. It wasn't a big surprise.
Yeah.
They look out in the field and they see that the barley is growing, and they already know if it's going to be leap year or not.
Yes.
But it had to be done biblically, because you cannot have Passover without barley. Because 3 days after Passover is the Feast of First Fruits. You have to have, according to Leviticus 23, you have to have a sheaf of barley to wave in the temple. So obviously, if there's no barley, there's no Passover month.
Right.
So that's where we get the word Abib, A-B-I-B, Abib. The Passover month in the Bible is called Abib. 6 times it's called Abib. 2 times it's called the month Nisan, which, by the way, is what we all use. I use the month Nisan in my Jubilee book. I called it Nisan. Every book I've read, even Jewish books that I've read from hundreds of years ago, they use the word Nisan. Why is that? Because that's the out of Israel word. In Nehemiah and Esther, the word Nisan is used 2 times because they're not in Israel. There's no barley to look at, so it's just month number 1. It means first month. And but God used 6 times the word Abib to show that the Passover month, when they came out of Egypt, they came out in the month Abib, meaning the time of harvest. The barley was ripe. So it's important, and it's a great big key. It's a big puzzle piece to understanding what's going on.
It is.
And I think it's a reset button. I think one of these days, God in heaven will look down at the nation of Israel, and he'll decide that it's time. Israel is Abib. Israel is ripe, and God will hit the reset button. And I believe at that time, the 7-month biblical calendar will be reset. It may have happened this year. It may have happened in March. Instead of the leap year, God might have hit the reset button. If he did, all the 7 feasts are all backed up a month. They'd actually, for instance, Feast of Trumpets in 2016, I think it's October 2nd. Now we know, we're looking at trumpets as a possible rapture date, but we're not date setters. But if the calendar was reset by God looking at the barley and hitting the reset button, then Feast of Trumpets would actually be in September this year. I think the new moon of September is September 2nd or something
boy,
like that.
a rapture, if it were this October, would sure solve that election dilemma for a lot of
It sure
people.
would. And if it's in September because of
King
the reset,
Jesus.
that's right. There'd be. I'm not sure there's going to be an election anyway. We'll just have to wait and
We'll
see.
leave that on the table.
We don't know what's going to happen.
We've had some talks about that amongst ourselves. Well, let's just say, if you missed the first program, you can catch it in the archives, or you can get the book for more information we're going to offer in a moment. But we looked at the Old Testament feasts and the prophecies about all of that, and barley being a type of Israel. But I'm excited for this particular interview because we're going to actually go into a New Testament passage out of the Gospels. And so if you have your Bible and want to join us, we're in John chapter 6. Which is a great, great account. We know it as the feeding of the 5,000. And so it says in John 6, verse 4, the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. And then drop down to verse 9, because Jesus is asking them to feed the crowd, and they trying to put their limited resources together like we do, and going, there's no way. And he said, well, look. And they said, well, verse 9, there is a lad here, which hath 5 barley loaves. Catch the barley, right? And 2 small fishes. But what are they among so many? And Jesus said, make the men sit down. And there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about 5,000. And Jesus took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed to the disciples, and the disciples to them that were set down, and likewise of the fishes as much as they would. When they were filled, he said unto his disciples, gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. So, mamas, you can feel good putting your leftovers in the refrigerator. Jesus gathered the leftovers. Verse 13. Therefore, they gathered them together and filled 12 baskets with the fragments of the 5 barley loaves, which remained over and above unto them that had eaten. Wow.
Yeah.
What a day that was. That's the only gospel that's in, the only miracle.
It's in all 4 Gospels.
In all 4 Gospels. I was about to say the only gospel in all 4 miracles, but that's turned inside out. So significant that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John commented on this.
Right.
But John's the one that tells us it was Passover and they were barley loaves.
Right. And this
Where are we going with this?
This is significant. And at the conference in Colorado Springs that we did in June, we talked about this.
What's it got to do with prophecy?
And I got more comments on this after I came out of speaking on this. I came out to the book table. I had more people commented. Even some of the other speakers commented, "What's this about the barley?" And there's something huge here.
Yeah.
First of all, we learned that it's Passover is near. It says Passover is nigh. That means Passover is coming up in a few days. We don't know exactly how long. Passover is nigh. I don't know what that means, but it's close. Which explains another mystery, why these 5,000 men are hanging around.
Yeah.
You ever wonder don't they have a job? Don't these guys do anything? They're just hanging around following Jesus around the field? And they're there because there were 3 times in Israel that all the Jewish men were required to assemble. I think it's Deuteronomy 16:16 says that 3 times must all your males who assemble in Jerusalem, and it's the 3 harvests. It's the 3 main harvests I discovered. It's the barley harvest, the wheat harvest, and the fruit harvest. But Feast of Unleavened Bread, which begins the evening of Passover, 6 p.m. on Passover day, begins the Feast of Unleavened Bread. All the Jewish men had to be assembled in Jerusalem. Well, guess what? That's when this took place, right before that. They didn't have airplanes and cars like we do. You got to think when you read the Bible. We're so Americanized, we miss all this. You didn't just jump in a taxi cab or a bus and go to Jerusalem. You walked, or you rode your donkey, or whatever. So chances are a lot of men are going to be there early. I think that's what this is. I think Jesus is preaching. All these men are around because they're there preparing for this feast, and they followed him around. And they're out on this field, and the Lord says, hey, we got to feed these guys. And all that was available was 5 barley loaves and 2 fishes that lad, I don't know how old a lad is, but evidently a lad is someone who's he's under 18, I guess. But so they find a young lad, he's got 5 barley loaves. The first thing I ask is, why is it barley? How come it's not wheat loaves? Because it's barley harvest. We know that because Passover is nigh. If Passover is nigh, it has to be the barley month. So it has to be the month of Abib. And so they get his 5 loaves of barley, but he also has 2 fishes. And I make note that 5 and 2 makes 7, which is interesting in numerology. That's God's number. And so they get the 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, and the Lord has everybody sit down. By the way, one of the other Gospels mentions that there, besides women and children, there were some women and children. But I point out, in the book, this wasn't about the women and children. He never mentions them. In fact, it's interesting in John, I believe it's in John, he tells the men to sit down. He didn't tell the women to sit down. This was about the men. And again, I point out 3 times in all the Jewish men had to assemble. Unleavened bread, Pentecost, and tabernacles. By the way, Pentecost, that explains Acts chapter 2, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Peter preaches to the multitudes.
From all over the world.
Yeah, and they were all Jews. Why were they there? Just a coincidence? No, it's Pentecost. All the men had to be there. Regardless where you lived, you came to Jerusalem. So that explains a mystery there, why these men happened to be there. And so he breaks the bread and he feeds the 5,000 men with the 5 loaves of barley and the 2 fishes, and they all eat. And then it's interesting. They gather up the leftovers. How do you have leftovers of 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, unless those fish are whales? I mean, but that lad would have had trouble carrying 2 whales around on his back. But they had leftovers because it's a miracle. I mean, this is a huge miracle. Try to imagine this in your mind. They're cutting the pieces of bread. Did it just keep growing? I mean, I don't know. I can't envision this. I can see him picking a guy up off the ground that's dead. I can see him grabbing his hand and pulling him up. I can see that miracle. But I can't see the bread just, I don't know, it must have kept growing. I don't know. But anyway, they feed everybody. Then they pick up the fragments that remain. And how many baskets? 12 baskets. How many disciples? There's 12 disciples. 12 doubting disciples. And I used to say, when I'd preached this years ago, I'd preached that he gave a basket for each disciple that doubted that this miracle could happen.
Because
and they had to carry that.
What is that among some?
Yeah, what are we going to do? We can't feed all these people. And the Lord said, bring that bread to me. We'll take care of it. So they doubted. And by the way, we would have too, I'm sure.
Well, it's like our churches today. We can't do that. We don't have enough resources.
We can't reach people.
We can't afford that.
Yeah.
But the Lord has ways.
Yeah, and beautiful story. And so they fit, but here's where it really gets interesting. There's something here that I've read this 100 times. There's something here I never saw, and I'm yet to meet anybody that I've shared this with that saw it. And
go right ahead.
Here it is. They filled the baskets with the fragments of the barley. Period. Where's the fish? There's no fish left over. Where's the fish? Here's what I think this means. I think what this is the fish is a type of what? New Testament Christianity. You see it on bumper stickers of cars, don't you?
Yeah.
The fish. And I think we get that from Genesis. I think it's the 5th day of creation, and God created the fish in the oceans. The 5th day is the beginning of the New Testament. If you go by the 1,000 years a day, days 1,000 years, the 6 days of creation represent 6,000 years of history. So day 5 is the beginning of the 2,000-year church age. And I think plus Peter was told that follow me, you become fishers of men.
Right.
The fish is a type of the New Testament age. When they fill up the 12 baskets, by the way, not only is there 12 disciples who doubted, there's 12 tribes in Israel, aren't there?
Yes.
Now we're getting to a prophetic lesson here. 12 tribes of Israel that have to be ready when the rapture happens. And like we said in the last program, God is not necessarily looking at the church or waiting for the last guy to get saved. God is looking beyond us at something else. He's looking at the nation of Israel. When Israel is ready, when they're Abib, when they're ripe, when Israel's ready for the end time events, because they're the star player. They're in the 70th week of Daniel. We're not there. They have to be ready. I mean, they got to be in their land. They got to be ready for the temple. They got to be ready to accept the covenant, the treaty, and all that. All these things got to be in place. That's what these 12 baskets are about. When the 12 baskets, when the 12 tribes of Israel are ready, and by the way, the 12 tribes got to be ready. We don't know who they are. I'm not sure in Israel they know who they are, but God knows who they are.
God knows.
There are 144,000 Jewish men that are going to be ready for the tribulation. They're there. They're from the 12 tribes of Israel. People can scorn that all they want. They can criticize that. They're there because God said they'll be there, and they're going to be there when the Antichrist goes in the temple and defiles it. They're going to accept. They're going to trust a Messiah right there, and they're going to become believers, and they're going to be God's missionaries, and they're going to run and scatter, and they're going to be the book of Acts all over again. So in other words, here's the prophetic lesson. The 12 baskets are full of the fragments of the barley. If you can imagine, 5 loaves of barley, the leftovers filled, I don't know how big the baskets are, but 12 baskets of barley with no fish in them. That's amazing. What does it mean prophetically? I think what it means is when Israel is ready, when Israel is ripe, when they're ready for the end time events to take place, God takes the fish out. That's us. The trumpet sounds. We're taken out. And God will deal with the barley, which is Israel, the nation of Israel, and the 12 tribes. So now it doesn't happen immediately because what we know is when the barley is ready, it's Passover month. What I think happens is when Israel is ready, when the 12 baskets are ready and they're full, God hits the reset button and it becomes Passover month. And I believe the 7-month prophetic clock, the calendar, the 7-feast clock, I believe it has a reset. And I believe 7 months from that will be God's Feast of Trumpets, not the one that's on the calendar today. You can't trust the calendar today.
Right.
By the way, right now, it's the year 5776 in Israel. Next year, 2017, if we're still here, will be 5777. Now they've messed with the calendar, and I've read the history of it. Some Jewish rabbis messed with it on purpose because of Christians. But isn't it interesting? God's going to get the last laugh, possibly. Even though they messed with the calendar and there's years missing, it's going to be 5777, God's number. So the story of the 5,000, that's amazing.
It is amazing.
And no fish in the basket. I've never saw that. I think it's a prophetic lesson for us to understand what it is that's going to begin the end time clock of the end days, which we're in right now. That clock's going to reset. It may have already done so.
But you know, this is fascinating stuff. We're talking with Dan Goodwin about his new study on the barley harvest, and he has a resource that Prophecy in the News is able to offer, and I'd just like to get this to show you. The Barley Harvest is the book on this, God's Sign for the End Times, and you've put all this into print, and I believe, just looking at your contents, you have how many chapters in here?
I don't
11.
know. There's 110 pages.
Yeah, well, you've got 11 chapters, and so there are lots of insights. And then, in addition, with the book are 2 CDs of audio teaching, 4 teaching sessions of 30 minutes on this barley harvest. There's a lot of good information here, and we're able to make that available to you. Go to the website, prophecyinthenews.com, or as always, call the 800 number there on your screen. This is a cost of $24.95 for the CDs and the book and shipping and handling, but you want to explore this further, that is a great resource. Dan, thanks. Really, I think that you're just really beginning to get the full grasp of this. You'll probably be unpacking more as we go ahead.
Yeah.
But you've got some other things that what we were discussing beforehand. You obviously relate this to Daniel's prophecy of the 69th and 70th week and the gap with the church age. Is there anything you'd say in particular about that?
Well, I believe this. I believe the church age is a parenthesis that is stuck in between the 69th week of Daniel and the 70th week of Daniel. Talk about more proof of a pre-tribulation rapture. You know? And I've got post-trib friends. I'm not mad at them. I get along with the post-trib crowd. But listen, it isn't that we're being delivered from some bad times. Christians have always lived through bad times. I believe there's bad times. If the Lord tarries,
They're coming here.
there's bad times. I tell people all the time, get ready, be prepared. There's bad stuff coming. Now, we may get raptured soon and miss some of this, but I'm telling you, there's bad stuff coming right here in America. It's already here, and it's going to get worse.
Coming, accelerating.
But it isn't about being delivered from suffering. Christians have always suffered. It's about being delivered because it isn't that we don't want to be here. It's we can't be here. We're not in Daniel. In fact, Daniel didn't see us. When you read the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 9 especially, and he talks about the 70 weeks that are turned upon thy people, that's Israel, and upon thy holy city. That's not New York. That's not London. That's Jerusalem, the holy city. And it gives 8 or 9 reasons why the 70th week is there. In fact, all 70 weeks have that purpose. The final thing on the list is to anoint the most holy. You know when that is. That's not during the church age. It's not at the beginning of the 70th week. It's at the end of the 70th week when Christ comes on the white horse, and he's going to be anointed as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I can't wait for that.
What a coronation.
Yeah. See, so Daniel completely skipped over something. What happens between the 69th and 70th week? Because Daniel says Messiah is cut off not at the end of 69 weeks, but in the 69th week. Exactly 69 weeks from King Xerxes' command to restore Jerusalem to Messiah being cut off. But that's not the end of a cycle. A sabbatical cycle is from Tishri 1 to Tishri 1, a 7-year period. Jesus died on Passover in the month of Bib, 7 months before Tishri. Now, this is interesting. By the way, Jesus, I promise you, Jesus died in a sabbatical year. Jonathan Cahn calls it the Shemitah year. Yeah. We call it sabbatical year, same thing. Jesus died in a sabbatical year. I wonder if we have thought about that. He died in 69 weeks. That's weeks of 7-year periods. Those are sabbatical cycles. Jesus dies in a sabbatical cycle, but he didn't die at the end of it. He didn't die at the Shemitah.
Right.
Died at Passover. Now I'll grant you, the veil is rent in two. God did that. God ripped the veil and ended ceremonial law. Or let me say it better. He fulfilled it. He didn't end it, he fulfilled it. He fulfilled the law. He fulfilled everything that he was pictured as, from the lamb to the water from the rock. He fulfilled it all, dies on the cross, becomes that Passover lamb, and God rents the veil, signifying that ceremonial law is over. You don't need lambs anymore. You don't need turtle doves. You don't got to make these offerings. Now he's our priest, and we can enter into the Holy of Holies with him. He rent the veil of the Holy of Holies. We're in there now. But the sabbatical cycle's not over yet. The Jews believe, and I think they're right, the Jews believe that creation happened on Tishri 1. Josephus, thank you. Josephus believed the same thing, and he gives testimony of this. I think they're right. If that's true, Jesus died almost at the end of the 3993 year, because it's not the year 4000, because the 7-year tribulation has to be Old Testament. So there's going to be 4,000 years in the Old Testament. Jesus dies in 3993, but not at the end of 3993. Stephen, I believe, dies at the end of 3993 on Feast of Trumpets. There's a chapter in the book called The Last Barley Standing. It is deep. It's the deepest chapter in the book, deepest chapter I've ever written. It's the story of Stephen and why Jesus is still standing at the right hand of the Father, why Jesus hadn't sat down yet. Because remember, the Apostle Paul said Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father. That's not what Stephen saw. Stephen saw him standing. I believe he's standing because the Jews had one last opportunity to accept their Messiah, and they rejected him, cast stones at Stephen. The Apostle Paul, whose name is Saul, is standing there holding their jackets while they throw rocks. And Stephen dies crying out, God forgive them, they, just like Jesus said, and sees Jesus standing at the right hand of the Father. I believe the clock stopped right there for Israel, and I believe it began for the church age right there, and everything changed after that. And you got Stephen, you got Paul getting saved, you got Philip preaching to the Samaritans, you got Acts chapter 10, the Cornelius, his household getting saved, Gentiles are now in this. And so we got the church age stuck in there between the 69th and the 70th week. I believe the rapture will happen right to the second where Stephen died on Feast of Trumpets.
Wow.
That's all in that chapter. I know it's deep. That's a lot to grasp on a TV show like this, but It's amazing.
We don't have long for this, but let me ask you, you have one chapter called The Queen's Barley. What's that all
The
about?
Queen's Barley is, real quickly, the book of Esther. I think there's a prophetic
Esther.
lesson there. Isn't there a prophetic lesson throughout everything? Everything I read now, maybe because I eat, drink, and sleep this stuff, every time I read the Bible, it jumps out at me. I think the king represents God. I think Vashti, the queen, represents Israel.
The first wife.
Right, the first wife, good point. The first wife, he's going to take a second wife. God takes a second wife. The church. I believe Esther, which by the way is a Gentile name, she was a Jew named Hadassah or something like that. Hadassah. She's a Jew. And remember Mordecai said it's not popular to be a Jew in these days. Let's change your name. When has it ever been popular to be a Jew? And so
How
changes
many have
her
changed their
name.
names throughout?
Changes her name to Esther. She becomes the queen, takes the place of Vashti because Vashti refused to come to his ceremony. Now, you can make anything you want of that. People say, well, she did the right thing. I think the picture here is God offered Israel something. Vashti rejected it, rejected Christ, rejected the Messiah, and God replaced her. I don't want to use the word replace because I'm not a replacement. Put her on the shelf.
Set her to the side.
And Esther becomes the church age. When God's done with the church age, or Vashti's ready, when Vashti is ready, God takes Esther out, that's us, the church, and goes back and deals again with the nation of Israel. So that's it in a nutshell.
That's fascinating. Fascinating. Is there anything in closing that you would like to just say about what this has done for your understanding of the Lord's return?
What this does for me is makes me realize this whole end time scenario is not in our hands. It isn't about the church or how many people we get saved or whether we're apostatized. Those are going to happen. It isn't about getting the last guy saved, although there will be a last guy saved. I don't know who it's going to be. Somebody be the last guy. But it's about God's time clock. God presses the button when Israel is ready. That changes everything for me.
Well, amen. And I read in Revelation where the kings are opposing God. Even it says they were appointed for, a year and a month and a day and an hour. God has a precise timetable that only He knows and is in absolute total control of. And He has a timetable for you. The Bible says it is appointed unto men once to die, and after this the judgment. We all need to be ready to meet God and not wait until then, because then it's too late. If you don't know Christ, today is the day. Today, if you hear His voice, don't harden your heart. Call upon Him. When Jesus took the bread and broke it and served it, later in John chapter 6, He says, you've got to partake of my flesh, which is given for the world, and drink my blood. And He's saying there that you really need to trust the sacrifice that He would give on the cross. Call on Him today and keep looking up.